Gemini speaks, Gemini speaks, boom, ba da boom, ba da boom. Well, hello there. Hello, hello, hello. So, this is a difficult subject to discuss. We're going to talk about the integrity of poverty. What does that mean? Well, in many places, you got to do what you got to do to support yourself, to support your family, to support whatever your situation is. Your situation is not good, and you're trying to make the best of it. From a United States point of view, from a African American point of view, who is a descendant of slavery, who is a descendant of many generations of poverty. I am the first generation to benefit from the many years of work from my parents, and they would be the first generation to make that change. Before that, there was my grandmother, and she was mostly poor most of her life. And then she was able to get by with the basics, but by no means was she middle class. The situation with poverty from my grandmother's point of view was that she worked hard and she tried to be a good person, she tried to be a fair person, and she tried to instill in her children, which would be my mother and my aunts and uncles, that they do the best to make the best life that they can have, but to be honest and fair. However, there is also another sense of poverty, um, living from a place of poverty, where you see the world differently. So, for example, I have been in other nations where they didn't have as many opportunities or resources, such as Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, places like that. I'm going to take this from the point of view of where I am now. You got to do what you got to do, even if it's going to trade your sense of integrity as a person, as a human being. You're constantly being opportunistic. So, what I mean by that is that if you think you can get more money for something that you're selling, you're going to do that. Typically, you're going to do that with someone who's you think is a tourist, someone who think can afford to pay more. I'm going to give an example of this. I solicited a cab, and I asked him how much would it be to get where I'm going. He threw out a number, and someone there who spoke English said, "Is that all it takes?" Now, the interesting thing is, I'm trusting that you are giving me the price that it would cost for anyone, the price that it would cost to go from point A to point B. But that's not the case. You're getting a different price. But they don't have cabs with meters, so you constantly have to negotiate. They do have some other options for taxis. They run a little high because of the type of clientele they would likely be dealing with, right? Because you need a phone in order to make that transaction, so that's how it is. Now, I'm going to talk more in depth about this later, but how does that make you feel as a consumer? I feel distrustful. I feel this is what it should cost for you, and I'm going to say, that's what it is, that's what I'm going to pay for it, giving me the price that you would give anyone. And that's not the case in this situation when it comes to people who have developed an idea that from their point of view, it's okay to be that way. But from my point of view, it lacks integrity. This is not to say I don't understand. I get it. You need to, make money. You need to make the best of every single situation that's different. But from a point of view of trust, from one human being to another, from the point of view of a tourist, you constantly feel taken advantage of. And it's not a pleasant experience, of course. You leave feeling, yeah, there were lots of nice things about that place, but never really being able to just relax and say, hey, this is what it cost. This is what I'm going to pay. No, you're going to say, this is what it might cost. but for you, you're going to pay this. I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So, the integrity of poverty. In America, that just wouldn't happen, right? Because it doesn't, there's no really a situation for that. People's expectations don't allow for that. And when we do think of that, we think of that person as being, involved in criminality, like, giving you a different price for this person, different price for that person. We don't tend to trust people like that. We don't tend to do business with people that are doing that, don't have this social construct in terms of price changing every time you go someplace. There are areas where things are cheaper, and there are areas where things are more expensive because of the clientele they're dealing with. But that's the case everywhere. In the tourist areas, in most places, you pay more. It's just what it is. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you're in a local area and they're taking advantage of who you are or who they think you are, really. The idea that anyone other than the people that live where you are have more than what they have. And that's an unfortunate assumption. The worst part, though, is that you leave with a feeling about a society or a community or a group that is not good. You're dealing with people that you feel distrustful. I went and I was communicating something because I had owed um, 30 pesos to the little mercado that I was at. And so when I went back, I said, hey, this is the 30 pesos that I need to give you. But he thought I was saying I was going to pay 30 pesos for one platanos. One platanos is like 10 pesos. It's not about the money. It's about they're constantly trying to be opportunistic, like, oh, she's going to pay 30, I'll take 30. Instead of saying, no, it's 10. Today I feel sad about this because, on one hand, I totally understand being in the situation for your entire life and for, the history of a place where you're not having enough. And so you're worried about not having enough. And you also have this idea that, like if you're American, for example, you have a lot of money. The thing is, they should understand. I mean, if anyone's been to New York, any Dominican especially has been to New York, because where the Dominicans live typically is not the nicest places to live in New York. It's not a bad thing, but the Dominicans, the African Americans, they tend to live on the outskirts where it used to be less expensive. There's this assumption that you have it. Now, it's not that I had that much money to spend on that cab ride, or that I wanted to spend that much on that cab ride, but that he was asking me to spend that much money on the cab ride. So I'm assuming that's the going rate. The thing is, it's not the going rate, it's the going rate for you. And so I could have had to bargain. I was tired, it was getting ready to rain. If that had not been the case, I would have said, never mind, I will get another cab, in which case the price would have changed. But this having to do this constantly is tiring, so that's how it is. You just want to be going from one to two to three, and it's simple, right? But it's not simple. Integrity of poverty. Why that happens? Why there's this constant desperation to gather wealth, no matter where you can get it, to gather more money whenever you see the opportunity. And I'm thinking also, it's sort of like stealing because you know how much you would charge a Dominican person, but you see me coming and you want to basically take my money for something that isn't actually worth that. It feels cheap. You feel it's a cheapening of that transaction, it's a cheapening of that experience, of that person, of that city, of that nation. And that cheapening leaves you feeling like yucky, so that's how it is. With integrity and poverty. I think that from my from a generational point of view, from my grandmother's point of view, especially, it was the wrong thing to do. It would be wrong for you to treat someone that way. No matter if you made a pie and you normally sell the pies for $5, you're not going to see the rich person get out of their car and say, this pie is $10. You're going to still sell the pie for $5 because you've already determined that your profit for this pie is $5. Now, if you are selling it in a different area with a completely different kind of clientele, that would be different, wouldn't it? It takes away from who these people really are. They're not those people, but they become desperate. There's a desperation. Oh my God, I can make more money with this one transaction, because the whole focus in life is I need more money. I need more money. Who wants to live that way, right? So they are beautiful people. I think actually all people are beautiful, to tell you the truth. There are people who are more challenging because they might have a sense of entitlement. And to speak on entitlement, it comes sort of from a place of entitlement as well. I'm entitled to charge you more because you have more to spend, in my opinion, from my perspective, even though they don't really know that. Who wants to function like that? Um, and the thing is, because there's a sense of entitlement about that, they don't even really feel bad about it. They don't think there's anything wrong with it. They feel entitled to take advantage of the situation because of their position. They don't consider the position of the other person if you're not the same as them, right? If you're the same as them, then they consider your position. They consider, oh, I know you're like me, you don't have a lot of money. I'm going to give you the regular price. Sometimes I'm going to give you a break, but they assume because your passport is in Dominican and your native language is in Spanish, let's say, just giving examples, that you should have a different experience in terms of what you're going to pay for something. You get over it, you deal with it because that's just what it is here. People having a sense of jealousy. You're American, your life is better. And that is probably the worst assumption you can make, because the idea that America is so great and we have all these opportunities and this and that, in some sense, it's true. It is true. But in some sense, it's really not true. And for many, many, many millions of Americans, this is not true. They live similarly. They live with very little, and they are in a situation they can't get out of. They're making the best of it. And just because they're sitting in front of you, do I think it's going to change? Probably not. Even beyond that, even the people who are doing well still have this attitude that you're American, you have more, you can afford to pay more. And I'm here to say, so I don't know if any Dominicans are going to see this video, but I'm here to say that is not true. That is not true. That Americans, just because they're visiting here, can afford to pay more, and that it's not even right for them to have to pay more. Um, you think poverty here is worse. Poverty in America is equally bad. It can be equally bad. Children who have nothing to eat, children who can't afford shoes, children who are not getting a good education. It is not even uncommon, it's actually quite common in many, many, many cities and many, many, many towns. If you're Dominican and you're seeing this, please understand. I understand your situation. But don't assume because my passport is an American passport that I have something more to give than you have, or I have something more than you have, period. And don't forget, I'm African American. I'm at the low end of the totem pole of my country in a completely different way from you. That's all I have to say. So, that's what Gemini has to say today. And what am I going to say? Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening. And peace. Gemini speaks. Gemini speaks. Boom, 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 boom.